106.5 FM and online. It's the After 5 guest with Wynne Thomas.
My After 5 guest today is Jane Fraser, making a debut of short stories and also a debut of radio interviews. How are you, all right?
I'm very well, thank you, Wynne. Thanks for inviting me here.
Okay, and the collection of short stories is called the South Westerlies. It's been described as a dark and settling debut collection of short stories. Did you plan it that way?
I didn't. When I first started writing this book, I just knew I wanted to write a collection of short stories set in Gower, where I've lived for 46 years. I wrote it not with a view of being published, but as part of my PhD at Swansea University. And very sadly, when I started writing it, my PhD supervisor, Nigel Jenkins, the wonderful poet, Nigel Jenkins from Gower, unfortunately died. And after he died, I turned to a book he was writing at the time called Real Gower, and it was a non-fiction book. And it was published by Serin, and he unfortunately never finished it in his lifetime. But it aimed to take an author who was familiar with Gower and tell it as it was, give insights into the peninsula. And he saw Gower as a troubled paradise. We all know it was the UK's first area of outstanding natural beauty, designated in 1956, and it is. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. But having lived there for 47 years, I saw it as something other as well. I saw it in terms of Nigel's troubled paradise. So for the focus of this fiction for this book, that's where I chose my gaze to lie, really, on things like struggling farmers, mass tourism, second homes, feuds and factionism. Really, as you said, it's not a bundle of laughs, really. It is a dark and unsettling story. I think it shows the other side of Gower. Hence, that's why I called it the South Westerlies, because even though the short stories are not linked, they're all set in Gower, and they're all given cohesion by the tone of the dark, salty southwesterly wind. So it was Nigel's impetus, really, to look at my own place in a very, very different way for the short fiction, and that's where the stories have arisen, really.
So you gained a PhD in 2017.
Yes.
So a love of writing was always there, wasn't it?
Well, my mother used to tell me that I was a child with an overactive imagination, but I don't know whether that was an insult or a compliment. But anyway, I did dabble as a child. I did diaries and little stories, and I put them all in a cupboard. And writing isn't my full-time job. I've got a day job. I'm co-director of a branding and design agency with my husband, and I write corporate fiction there. But it was going to do the MA in Swansea University and then the PhD, which opened up my eyes to it, and I got addicted. I got hooked a little later, perhaps, than I would have liked to. But as people said to me, there's never the right age. There's only the right time, and the right time was for me to go to Swansea and under the lovely Nigel Jenkins and Stevie Davis, who you know there, back in 2010.
Yeah, Stevie, yeah.
And that's where it all started, and a particular love of the short story. So, as I said, I was delighted then when this collection was, well, it's actually published by Salt. Tomorrow is the actual publication day.
Oh, right, so I've got a bit of a preview there.
So this is a very exciting day for me, really. It's my first on radio, and a bunch of flowers came from Salt this morning. So, yeah, this is a first for me.
Let's look at some of the stories and let's touch on some of them, okay? I just picked up a couple of stories. So I read a lot of them, but these are the ones that caught my eye. This is the boat that Dad built. Some nice touches there. The butcher lives above the shop. I can smell the sawdust, actually, in your descriptions, the old-fashioned butchers. So is Raymond Williams, the butcher, is he a dedicated family man?
He is a dedicated family man. He goes out of his way to make his family work, I think. He's a hard worker, industrious in his job, and then he develops a love of woodwork, which develops from little teak light bulbs to desks to little garage motor. Finally, this boat that he crafts and builds in a bedroom above his shop in the terraces of Swansea East. And I suppose this boat is a symbol, as a hope, really, a dream that's going to take him and his family away, if only for a fleeting weekend now and again, into the Gower Peninsula, where he'll make them all very, very happy. But if you've read the story, you know what happens in the end.
Yeah, we won't give that away.
I won't give that away. Yes.
Was it a bit in the book? Was it a bit in the story which caught my eye? Was he built this boat upstairs and then couldn't get it out of the house?
That's right.
Which has happened to many people, hasn't it?
If you remember, if you're as old as I am, the corner shop was on at the end of a terrace, and this particular butcher, I said they kept the front bedroom above the shop for the building of this, and when he finally built it, he realised that it was too big to get out of the door. And the window had to be taken out. And if you remember the old milk floats that used to come round in the old days there, a friend of the butcher came and they hoisted this boat out of the bedroom window onto the back of the milk float and ferried it away to Oxwich Bay, where it stayed. Yeah. And you'll have to read the end of the story to find out what happened for them.
Absolutely right, Jane. Yeah. So, look what the wind blew in. A sad story of an old man stuck in his way or set in his ways. Mm-hmm. Nothing was good enough for him. It's sort of a personal reflection there, was there? Or else you've heard about people in that situation.
I think I was imagining a man there and the daughter-in-law in the story there, who thought she could save him from himself, really. A bit of a meddler. Always thought that she could perhaps get him to better housing, make him be looked after, make him to see that there could be a better way. But I suppose the story explores for whose benefit really is that. Yeah. Was the old man was quite happy where he was, really. As it says in the stories, he thought his house that was falling down was like a palace. Yeah, to him, that was home. That was home. And the meddling daughter-in-law thought she could make it all better for him. And in the end, there was an impasse, really. I suppose it's about control and realising that you can't sort everyone out in the end.
It was all about a lot of old people in Wales who live on their own in terraced houses like that.
Yes.
And just don't want to move. And they go on from day to day struggling just to make meals for themselves and to live and to do the normal things like making the beds and doing the hoovering, and they struggle to do it, but the independence will not be given up by themselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, there was a lesson in it for me as a writer, really, is that this character was literally going to stay there until the house fell in round his ears, because it was home.
Or he died.
Or somebody would happen. But he was not going to make a decision for himself that would take him away from the place that he'd loved and was familiar to him, however good that sometimes we think that is for people.
Right, so my story 3... there's 3 and 4, which I'm not going to ask you about now, but there's the Grey Mare and the Sands are singing. But the Perfect Wave, which I thought had a lot of technical terms. Did you have to research that?
I've been living in Llangennith, which probably is the surfing capital of Gower and probably the UK. I probably had a misspent youth there. It's known all over the world. I actually moved to Llangennith in 1973 to an ex-husband who was then a surfer. So These stories are purely fiction.
I know the story, but you can't.
I still live in Llangennith, where we work and live, looks out right across the ocean. We've got PJ's surf shop in the village as well.
Right, yes.
So I've probably, most of my adult life, I've been imbued in surfing. I've been a surfing widow. I know, but this is purely fiction. But there are many people, like I think my central character here is that obviously Gower's not an island, it's a peninsula, but the sea is ever present, both for what it gives and probably for what it takes away, you know, with accidents and things like that. But I've known many, many people in my life, like the character here, who are actually married to the sea. To the cost, well, not to his personal cost, to the personal cost, but to the cost sometimes of other people in that relationship. So I suppose it's not unlike golf or any sport, but lots of surfers say it's not a hobby, it is actually a way of life.
An addiction.
And it's compulsive. I've never actually surfed, so I can't understand. But from what people tell me, there's no feeling like it, and it's adrenaline, and you're always surfing for that next wave. So again, this character Sam in this story, he's addicted to it at the personal cost of his relationship, and you'll have to read the story again. But It's not a good ending. It's not a perfect ending, but it's the ending he chose for the way he lived his life.
Do you think it's an ending of short stories? It always leaves you wanting more. Is that what the writer's looking to achieve? Because some of the stories sort of go, bump.
I love the writer.
That's the feel you get. Oh, bump, it's gone. Yeah?
I love the writer Conan Jones. I love his writer. And he always says, the short story is about what it leaves behind. I think it needs to leave space for the reader perhaps to make their own interpretation.
Yeah.
My own experience of reading short stories and bad short stories before was that they were always tied up or they had a horrible twist in the tale. I didn't want my stories to be like that. Somebody said, you can write on, but it's best if you really cut it further back, cut it about 2 paragraphs back, and that's where your short story ends. But I do want to leave the reader perhaps questioning and not saying, oh, I know what, because there is no ending, there's only death, isn't there? And if a short story is a mirror of life, then the endings are not tied up. So there's no twist in the tale in these stories, and I think they're not tied up. I think they're open to interpretation, especially that one. I think you can make your own minds up about Sam.
Well, it's a well-written short stories.
Thank you.
What I would call is a page turner, because when you read the story, you're turning the page because you can't wait to turn the page to see what's happening on the other side of the page, okay?
Okay.
So that's a good thing.
Well, that is a good thing because I've been told that my stories are quite quiet, that they're not highly dramatic. I don't go in for high drama. I think there's one story in here, the Grey Mare, which is probably my most dramatic story.
Yeah.
The others are quite quiet. I've been influenced a lot by the wonderful Irish short story writer called Claire Keegan. She always maintained that stories should be about rising tension rather than high drama. So I'm really glad that you wanted to turn the page and not lose the will to live.
Well, Jane, thanks so much for coming to see me today.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute delight. The book, of course, is called The South Westerlies. It's by Jane Fraser. It's published by Salt, and it's available from tomorrow.
It's available from Salt from tomorrow. It's available from Amazon and in Cover to Cover as well, the independent bookshop in Swansea.
Tim will like that plug.
Tim will like that plug. Yeah, so thank you for having me.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks you very much.
Thanks for being me after 5.